Are live. Hey, everybody. I'm super excited because not only are we doing another state story, which I've got a soft spot for. I love having people on that love their state and are willing to talk about it and willing to build it up and tell us, frankly, why their 150th of the union is the best damn portion of the union. Having said that, this is also a great time and a great blessing because we've got Yizz the Eunuch on it, and I'm just super excited. We've been going back and forth trying to make this happen, and finally we are here. So, Yizz, this evening, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, friend. Thank you for having me. Howdy to all the usual listeners. Good to see some of my people probably going in the chat soon. Here, I advertised on the Twitter and in Telegram and other places. Hopefully, we'll have some of my usuals in the chat too.
Fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, you keep a pretty good solid group in there between Discord and Dragons. What is some of the output that you've got going on? You've got Discord and Dragons. You've got
Yeah,
some of your
I
personal
I
streams.
did I did about a 2 year series with my friend Newsfist called The Empire of Lies. Well,
Mhm.
he wanted to move on to do other things, and he just got really tired of that serious, heavy reading subject matter
Yes.
because he's got a lot going on. He lives in London. He's trying to immigrate to the United States to get the hell away from London. And so we stopped that series, not necessarily forever, but for the foreseeable future. So the only regular thing I'm doing is my panel show, which is like a better unpopular opinions, if anybody still remembers that for on AA's show.
Wow,
And
swinging.
yeah, well, I'm just saying it's better. It has better structure.
I
It has
love
better
it.
format. We talk more truthfully and based. It's a good format. It's like unpopular opinions, but better and more based. And I do that every Monday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. Just as a way to share my thoughts, I do a morning walk in my East Tennessee Shire. You know,
Yes.
10 to 20 minutes. I upload that on Tuesday mornings, and um, right now I'm considering what to do with the rest of my time. Like I sort of got burnt out on covering politics and just
Yes.
mainstreaming culture war and racial identity and all this other stuff. Like it's just there's thousands of people doing that stuff now. Sort of like how Don the Pleb hung up his hat on all the
Mm.
streaming and doing stuff because I didn't start this because I wanted to be a YouTuber. I started this because I wanted to make sure that the discourse went a certain way. And it did. Like I won. Like everything that I want people to be talking about, everything that I want people to care about, white identity in a positive way, stopping the Zionist war machine, realizing the evils and the lies we've been told about sex and gender and World War II and all this other shit. Well, that's becoming mainstream. My job's done.
Yeah.
Like I everything went the way I wanted it to go. So I don't really feel the need to keep pushing in all that. So I want to cover things that make me happy, things I can talk about
Hmm.
from a more aware based point of view. So I started talking about video games. I don't know if I'm actually going to make a go of covering video games full time or not, but I don't really know what extra material I have in my future going on right now. But I like to
Yeah.
talk about interesting stuff, movies, video games, politics, books, you know, economics. Like I like talking about that stuff with people. I just don't know what other focus to take with my online presence other than still hosting Discordant Dragons, which I love and will not stop. Like I'm not planning on stopping that. I just,
Right.
you know, I spent like 2 years of my life covering COVID and all the lies and bullshit
Hmm.
around the vax and how the government did all this and that, most of which has been taken down now, which pisses me
Yes.
off. But at least some of it still lives on Odyssey and Rumble, but not much of it.
There was a time for me where the woke, the great, the great saint, however you want to phrase it, it was all right there in your face, and people more capable than myself were noticing it and breaking it down and giving us good meat to chew on. I'm thinking of guys like, well, Dave Green, the distributist, and then
Mm-hmm.
Morgoth. Though at that time, the distributist and Morgoth were probably the two.
Yeah, I
eh,
like Dave.
It's
Dave's a personal friend of mine. We
okay.
talk and see each other sometimes,
Yes.
and we see each other at events and talk privately occasionally. He's a
Yeah.
good guy. I like Dave a lot, and
So
Morgoth I like a lot and respect, but we're not like close friends or nothing. Like he knows I
sure.
exist, he knows who I am, but like we've
Yeah.
never like talked or hung out or nothing. Just a couple times on stream together.
Yeah, so they those guys, I mean, there for a second, they were breaking it down and they were helping me to understand a lot of what was going on. So when I finally decided I wanted do the YouTube thing just to have fun.
Mhm.
I very much wanted to focus on those ideas that were less about breaking down what was going wrong and were more about, hey, what's fun? What can we celebrate?
Yeah.
What are those things that are breathing life into us in the
Yeah,
moment?
I want to cover positive stuff on my channel now instead of just the negative stuff. That's why I wanted to maybe
Yeah.
talk about movies and books and video games and shit that I think are good and have merit. I started a series called Fictional Convocation that I'm considering getting off the ground again for specifically talking about that kind of stuff.
Yes. Very good. Very good. So that's honestly a perfect jumping in point to say you are now, as of 5 minutes ago, the official representative of the state of Tennessee.
All right.
Tell
Well, you
us,
picked a good one.
right? I'm excited. I'm looking forward to your breakdown of who the Tennessee people are, what the state is, what makes you all tick.
Okay, well, Tennessee, we'll start with some basics. It is the widest state east to west. It takes me about 12 hours to drive from one end to the other, going all the way down 81, then to I-40, all the way to Memphis. I live in almost the eastern tip of Tennessee, and Memphis is, of course, in the southwestern corner. So that's, you can drive for 12 hours, morning to evening and still be in Tennessee. It's a big state. North to south, it ain't that big. But Tennessee is home to a wide ethnic cluster of Southerners. Uh, there are Southerners that are more akin to the plantation Deep South people in central and western Tennessee that have come up from Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. The about half of Tennessee, the eastern half, is heavily populated with a more old colonial roots type of people, and that's my folk. That's who I come from. We're the hillbillies, right? We are heavily Ulster Scot, which means of Celtic DNA or Irish descent. I don't know if it's the majority of our ethnic ancestry or not, but it's, I'd say, at least an even split with the English ancestry going back to the beginning. We've also had a large number of German immigrants immigrate here. We have Little Gatlinburg, that's near where Dollywood is. Obviously, Dolly Parton's from Tennessee. She grew up not too far from where I did. When I was a kid, I went to Dollywood. I got to sit on her lap back when Dollywood wasn't a big thing yet. Like a lot of us,
It's
we'd go
crazy.
there and she would, there'd only be a couple hundred people in the audience, and we'd come up on stage and dance and clap together and stuff, and she'd talk to kids.
Yes.
My uncle, two of my uncles, but mainly one of them, were big into bluegrass, and one of
Okay.
them actually went and played professionally for years in Nashville and played backup guitar and backup banjo for people like Hank Williams Jr., Johnny
Mhm.
Cash, other famous people that just go to record in Nashville. And they would meet the professionals who worked there. And one of my uncles was a professional guitar and banjo player out there for several years. So,
You
through
don't
my family, I got to meet and be close to a lot of famous people who worked in bluegrass and country music, and that was pretty cool growing up.
you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But did your uncle ever give you a story and said, "Nah, this guy's a real one," or the opposite?
Uh, he said, well, we all know it now, but back in the 80s,
Yeah.
Johnny Cash had always been a troubled, haunted individual.
Yes.
And there were a lot of stories about, him being a womanizer and into drugs and, being a nasty son bitch. And
Mhm.
many of us in the hills, unfortunately, for good and ill, we will say, are extremely religious and judgmental about it. Judgmental
Yeah.
about people who are into drugs and drinking and womanizing and stuff. And so Johnny Cash was of a very mixed opinion, let's say, where I'm from. And my
No
uncle, who
kidding.
worked with him a few times and knew him, said that whatever dark past he had beaten it. And
Wow.
he left behind the drugs and the womanizing and stuff. And my uncle really believed that he was a changed man. So he,
Yes.
that's about as close to a knowing a famous person personal story that I have. But it's
That's
only
a
hearsay. And
big testimony,
I mean,
it's a big
yeah, but it
deal.
could be wrong is the thing, because it's all just personal
Okay.
experience. Like I don't
Fair.
know anything about Johnny Cash personally. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I never met him personally. Just know of him through people in my family. But it's that's the closest story I have to anything like that. But anyway, okay, moving away from Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton again.
Right.
What you ask about Tennessee?
Yeah.
Tennessee is basically like the Tennessee that's the real Tennessee is like Nashville and East. Western
Okay.
Tennessee is still real Tennessee, but it's of a more watered down Southerner type and
Okay.
of more internationalist or interstate people and Southern blacks. Um, Obviously, Memphis is the home to the Southern black. It's,
Yes.
like it's a large percentage black population in the rural area around there, especially, in southern down Mississippi, Alabama. A lot of blacks from there have family back and forth. Uh, and a lot of Western Tennessee is very, very poor because the
Okay.
majority of business, medicine, industry, music, racing, technology, all of that stuff happens in Eastern Tennessee. So Western Tennessee is a much poorer area. And once you get past Middle Tennessee, it becomes the flatlands. So it's not mountain Tennessee anymore. It's like
Yes.
cornfields and tobacco fields Tennessee. And that is much more of a deep South plantation style type of living. But
Mm.
we are very similar in a lot of ways, like dialect, the kinds of foods we have, our touchstone history to the war between the states. And to understand what makes Tennessee what it is today for good and ill, you have to understand what Tennessee is going all the way back to the 1800s. Tennessee in the United States has a nickname of the volunteer state. And that's because in the War of 1812 under Andrew Jackson, and then later in, I think it was the 40s, the Mexican American War, thousands and thousands of Tennesseans volunteered to go fight in those wars. And speaking of the 18, I'm pretty sure it was 1840s, might have been 1830s, but I think it was the 40s. The Mexican American War is the reason why everybody knows us as the volunteer state, even though, according to Tennessee history I was taught in school, we technically were called that because of the Andrew Jackson time, but it was socially, like, solidified because of the mid 1800s with the Mexican American War. And that's why so much of the dialect and so much of the cultural touchstones exist between Tennesseans and Texans. Like, if you
Okay.
know a lot about American dialects, Texans and East Tennesseans like me, we have a very similar twang and drawl. It ain't like a
Mm.
deep Southern drawl like in Georgia or Mississippi.
Yes.
We have much more of a mountainy twang in our accent, and we have a much more Irish Celtic energy in our folk music because,
Mm.
like we were talking about before stream, so much of the cultural ethnic heritage that lives in the heritage Americans of hillbilly Tennessee is very much Ulster Scott and from Ireland.
Yes.
And so we have a lot of that twang. A lot of those colloquialisms still exist today, like the word dunderhead, for example. Dunderhead, apparently, I didn't know this. I just thought it was a dumb hillbillyism. Apparently, dunderhead is like an old Irishism. I didn't know that. But
I
like,
didn't know that.
so like a lot of the weird old timey phrases that I hear well, they're all dead now, but I used to hear my grandparents say a lot. Apparently, them phrases are from Ireland or maybe Scotland. So
Yes.
there's still a lot of ethnic culture alive in us that we don't even recognize. Like that
Mm.
story you told me about Johnny Cash playing a lick on a guitar over in Ireland, and a guy being like, "Hey, that's our folk music. I recognize that. That's
Yep.
been part of us for a long time." And Johnny Cash was like, "Well, it's part of my family. Been since before I can remember too." Like
Yeah.
we have a lot of rich ethnic history that connects us to Scotland and Ireland, and of course England,
Yeah.
like a lot of old timey
Well,
heritage Americans. So that mixed with the willingness of the Tennesseans to be adventurous, to go exploring, to fight. And that's another reason why Tennessee is prevalent throughout a lot of American history. Is it's not just because of people being willing to be soldiers, but people being willing to do damn near anything. Because
mm.
hillbillies, we's crazy. Like we do dumb shit for fun. Like the meme, "Hey y'all, watch this." I guarantee you that a Tennessean said that first. Like, Tennessee is just full of crazy, wild people that are willing to just throw caution to the wind and be like, "I'm gonna die or be a hero. Goddamn, here I go." Like, that's just in our blood here. Like, and we're wild and crazy. But that doesn't mean we're bad people. We're like all the anti-white Hollywood shit. I don't know why the Hollywood people hate us so bad. But man, we've been besmirched and drugged through the mud, us Southerners, not just Tennesseans, but like Southerners in general, but
Sure.
especially Tennesseans being drugged into the mud and act like, like, look at the Beverly Hillbillies. Everybody loves that
Yeah.
show, But it was basically taking the piss and making fun of us for being backwards, no shoes wearing idiots that don't know nothing, right? Like, that
Yes.
just ain't true. We are a little crazy and we are very rustic. Like, a lot of us don't like to wear shoes. I don't like to wear shoes. People around here are very primitive in certain ways, but we're
Hmm.
also really damn smart. Like, we
Yeah.
read books. Everybody's house has encyclopedias. Every boy and girl, gender don't matter. We all learn to hunt and fish. We all learn
Yeah.
about gardening and farming. We all learn how to milk a cow. We all learn what it's like to build a house and throw up a barn. Like, and like, we're kind of like Amish in that way out here. Like, we believe that we all have to know these things to survive, because the government and
Hmm.
the world and companies and plantation owners, they all turn their backs on us and treat us like
Yeah.
niggers. And like, we've been the white man's nigger alongside the blacks for a long time. All of us poor Southern hillbillies. So that brings me to the next point about the people of Tennessee. You have a lot of good black folks in Tennessee. Tennessee was the home to, I think, if I'm not wrong about this, the first or one of the first black incorporated municipalities, and the largest and the first black owned corporation. I think it was for either farming or real estate or something like that.
Okay.
Um, this is why the government had to come in and force desegregation on us, because the blacks and the whites got along better in Tennessee than anywhere else. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because we had a Nathan Bedford Forrest. He's the guy who started the Ku Klux Klan. But it ain't what the Klan turned into, the fucking ridiculous,
The
black and Jew,
honeypot.
the black and Jew hating farce that it became. Like,
Sure.
originally, their sins aside, let's just talk about why they existed. They existed to upkeep the heritage of the Tennessean, the white man, and the Southerner in face of all of the oppression and ugliness being done to us by the Union after the Reformation. So, a big part of that was not being like the North, that was into the worship and the white erasure of elevating blacks above their place. And now, of course, that's a very ugly thing to say in the modern day, but that's a reason why you had a lot of successful black folks making peace with the whites and getting along in their own areas. All
Yeah.
throughout East Tennessee, you had segregated churches, schools, businesses, farms. The poor blacks and the poor whites, we got along. We weren't at war with each other.
It's
And
gauche at this point, but there was a season, even in say the past 15 years, where many black nationalist types, not the farcical ones, but various people, where they would recognize that we were doing better when we were focused on ourselves.
Well, yeah, and again, pressure is what matters. This is what I talk
Mm.
about all the time on my channel and other people's channels, about your racial and ethnic identity has to be at the forefront, or you don't have a country. You can't have a
Yeah.
country. You have to have social, economic, and religious pressure on outgroups to make them behave and conform. And that doesn't mean that, blacks are lesser people. It's any people anywhere in the world. And
Mm.
because of Nathan Bedford Forrest and the early Klan, and because of all of the based Christians at the time, understanding we're all God's creatures and God made blacks and whites different, so we have
Yeah.
to act different, we have to live different, that let us get along and have peace and success for both of our races. Where this multiracial, white erasure bullshit of we're all the
Right.
same, we all bleed red, put us all together, that don't
Yeah.
work. And we've seen how that don't work everywhere else. And that's why, 40 years after the fact, they had to come in with soldiers and make us desegregate, because they
Mhm.
didn't like people being able to point to Tennessee and being like, hey, they got segregation down there and they're doing good. Look at that. They got good white and good black schools. They got white and black businesses. They're both making money. They're both being prosperous. Well, that flies in the face of liberalism. And as we know today, with all the censorship, the eye of Sauron likes to erase things that remind the sheeple of the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth is that multiracialism, white erasure, and the destruction of white people's civilization, it doesn't work. All of this liberal pie in the sky bullshit is based on lies and things that can't be real. And
Yes.
that's
Well,
why
and
they had to
that's
destroy all of the successful black owned stuff in America,
mhm.
in Tennessee, is because that was not what the American morality was. It was the post Nuremberg anti white morality of white erasure and feminism and liberalism and all this other commie bullshit. It was that. And so they had to come in and destroy the cultural touchstones of the past. And having people who lived well in segregation is a sin
Yes.
that this moral order cannot abide. That's why they had to destroy South Africa. They were extremely successful with apartheid, blacks and whites both. That's why it had to be destroyed on the altar of anti-whiteism. So it's like that's
Well,
the
it's
same shit that was the same shit done to us in Tennessee here because of that. And
so
that's unfortunate.
that's an
But this is, let
go
me
go
finish
ahead.
before you talk. This is why even today, with all the BLM, all of this stupid Obama era bullshit, not all the blacks bought it. There's a whole bunch of based regular black folk in rural Tennessee that get along just fine with whites. And we understand that we're different and we don't race mix together very often. And that's good. But we get along together across racial lines because we have very similar ethnic identity. Very similar ethnic
Yes.
identity in Southern Christianity, in being oppressed and enslaved by rich white fuckers of the past. We have been mistreated and kicked and called dirt and trash and filth by rich foreign white men and Jews, going all the way back to the 1700s. We have a lot of cultural touchstones, the hillbilly and the black in Tennessee. So there's a lot of peace between the rural blacks and whites here that still exists because of the history we've shared together as being poor, oppressed folk together. And so, like even back in the 1800s, before slavery was abolished, a whole bunch of poor white folks bought blacks out of slavery, so they could work more productively on the shit that mattered in East Tennessee, whether it was mining or farming or just working in businesses. There's a lot of white folks in East Tennessee that didn't like slavery, but still allied with the Confederacy because they didn't like the lies and the oppression of the Union. And a lot
So
of the
you're
blacks
hitting
here,
on a
and yeah, that's where I'm going with all this. Is America
yes.
is Tennessee stands out in America as being a duality of folk, a duality of loyalty. Tennessee was the last state to leave the Union and the first one to rejoin it. It also has I think it doesn't have as many battles in the war between the states as Virginia, but almost. Like Tennessee and Virginia is really where the war between the states was fought. Is East Tennessee and Virginia. And all throughout Tennessee, you've got like there you can't drive 100 yards in East Tennessee without seeing some kind of war between the states memorial, or hey, this important battle happened here, or this was an important place for logistics. Like Tennessee has an amazing history, especially in the war between the states. And most importantly, Tennessee sent an almost even split originally of soldiers to the North and the South. Now, eventually, it was like 4 or 5 times as many on the side of the Confederacy. But in the origin of Tennessee, families, businesses, churches were split down the middle because of a difference of opinion between what side to be on.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily come from a bad place. It comes from a place of love. Like if you go back and read the literature of Jackson and other people that talked about Tennessee, and then later read about people in the Reformation era after the war happened, people that wrote about how they lamented the choice they made, but it was still the right one to make. Tennesseans had a very strong ethnic bond with the North. And we had a very strong, passionate bond of brotherhood with what the South had become. And so we were very torn in East Tennessee about what side to be on. And that's why it was so difficult for us, because we weren't the new South. We were the old part. We're like East Tennessee is almost as old as anything else in the United States. And we have a very long history of wanting to do what's right for our people and America. And that caused us a lot of split during that era. And then you move forward, Tennessee's been a purple state for a long time. We have a strong Democratic bent going, of course, back to Nathan Bedford Forrest and all that stuff back in the 1800s and early 1900s, when basically the Republicans and the Democrats were swapped from what they are today. And don't forget, you have a long history of people in Tennessee, black and white, being poor and abused by rich fuckers. And so that plays into populism, and that, of course, plays into the modern right leaning into the moral majority with the Schofield Bible Judeo-Christian mind cancer, that Jewish spell they cast on all of us 80 years ago. And you have a lot of that mind cancer, and you have a lot of the poor people just wanting gibs and handouts, mostly black these days, but it also applies to a lot of whites going back 50, 60, 70 years ago. So you have a lot of downtrodden, broken people here that feed into populism of both the Democrats and the Republicans. So it's a very mixed state when it comes to the dumb sheeple. And it's also a very even split state when it comes to the academics, the rich people, etc., because a lot of the people who are successful and rich from here are of a much more nationalistic bent that have a strong ethnic identity, and they don't just buy into the modern anti-white pause of corporate America and of the government. So Tennessee is a duality. There's great people here of left and right. There's great people here of black and white, and we have a very interesting and deep American history to who we are and what we are. And it's difficult to encapsulate all that in a 30 or 40-minute conversation. But I think I got all the basics out in the air right now. So that is what you need to know about what Tennessee is and who we are as people right there. There you go.
That was a banger. I did that was good. I tell you, a couple of things that stuck with me. The one was comparing Tennessee to apartheid South Africa.
Mhm.
If one, I don't want people getting hung up on that foolishly. Two, I want them to actually hear what you're saying about how in apartheid South Africa, there was this idea of, like you've been talking about, each culture having the ability to act within their culture and be productive within
Yeah,
their culture.
it's and in Tennessee it was because remember Tennessee it's a big state.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people live here and there's plenty of room, right? We still have plenty of room today. And this is why I think Tennessee has been under attack in the modern era with all this anti-white stuff is because we have so many blacks and whites who naturally get along across racial lines. I think that they look at us as an untapped gold mine of white erasure and anti-white hatred because of all the blacks that get along with whites here. Now, of course, like everything in the modern era, that's become worse. Of course, things are worse than they were, but we still have a lot of that. Like there's black folk I see every day when I go into town, when I have to go into a city, and they dress like me, they talk like me, they don't hate me, they ain't wearing pants half off their ass, they ain't using all this ugly mush mouth inner city talk.
Their culture is
They
Tennessee.
talk with the twang like I do, but it's a little different because they're black. They dress like I do, but it's a little different because they're black. But we're very similar when it comes to understanding each other and knowing that we're different. I'm white, they're black. We know that. But we get along because we recognize that we're different and we give each other our space. Like, I don't go mess with black churches and black businesses. They don't come mess with white churches and white businesses. We get along. We're still like that here today. And it's not as good as it was in the past, of course, because nothing is, but that still exists. I know it still exists because I see it everywhere I go in East Tennessee.
Mm.
Like, it's not that blacks and whites race mix and we're just at this mutt race now. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is a lot of that old-timey racial identity stuff in a healthy way still exists in both whites and blacks here. And we get along because of that. Like, okay, good example. There's a historic place here called Historic Jonesboro. And there's a historic memorabilia shop there. They sell stuff. They sell World War I and World War II memorabilia. They sell War Between the States memorabilia. And every time that I go there, because people who come to visit love to see this shop. It's a huge place, bunches of rooms. It's 2 or 3 stores. It's an old giant plantation home. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Well, every time I'm in there, I see black folks celebrating Confederacy. I mean, I've even seen blacks over at the World War II thing celebrating National Socialists and wanting to buy swastikas and buy pictures of Hitler and stuff. Like, we have a very good understanding of we've been lied to and used by men in power.
Yes.
And so we recognize people who positively recognize race and are willing to step up for race. And so that's why you have whites here who respect Malcolm X, and you have blacks here who respect Adolf Hitler. And not just Hitler, but also more contemporaneous who respect, George Lincoln Rockwell. There's a lot of blacks in East Tennessee who were on board with George Lincoln Rockwell of the 50s and 60s. You know who that is? I assume you do, right?
Yes.
So there's this shop has a lot of pictures and memorabilia
He
of George
was a
Lincoln
Navy
Rockwell.
veteran.
Yeah, Navy veteran. Yeah, and not a Marine. Big difference. I understand, but that's the point. Is like whites and blacks in East Tennessee. They don't view individuals like a Mussolini or a Hitler or a George Lincoln Rockwell in the same way that a
Yeah.
normal white in the suburbs or the city would in most places of the country, because we have been raised on revisionist history going all the way back to before there was a World War I or World War II. Like
Yeah.
we've been red pilled on that war shit since the 1800s. And we understand that this Zionist Judeo Christian lunacy shit is bad for us. And it has been going all the way back. And whites and blacks both know that here. And to a smaller degree than it's not like everybody, but it's
Right.
common enough that you bump into it and you notice it. And with the popularization of the internet and all of this dissident media, there's a lot more based whites and blacks in East Tennessee than there's ever been, in my opinion. Like everywhere I go, it's easy to talk to black folks and white folks around here about anti-whites and the evils of
Hmm.
Zionism in the government. Like it's just on it. It's in everybody's mind now. So
Yes.
that gives me hope that Tennessee will continue on and maybe one day be a shining example of there being racial identity for whites and blacks that's positive for both of us,
Yeah.
because it was in the past just 100 years ago. Well, and I think it could be again. And I'm not one of these people that's like, we got to send every non-white overseas. Like, no, that's bullshit. That ain't going to happen. That's untenable and stupid. The best you can hope for is to have a positive white identity that will make everyone else appreciate that, or at least get in line with it. And I think that the number one person who will get in line with that is the American black. They don't have a homeland
Yeah.
to go back to, remember? Their ancestors were whipped and put in cages by other blacks who sold them to Arabs and Jews who sold them to the French, and they came here. They don't have a homeland to go back to. Like
Well,
the
this
American
was
black, but there ain't nowhere else for them to go. They
right.
belong somewhere, and it might as well be here if they're going to support us and having a good white America again. I got no problem with them having small pieces of land and cities that they have, as long as they work in service to the well-being of white America. And I think there's a lot of blacks who agree with that. And I've even met blacks, like some black guys in the Old Glory Club that I'm part of. There's a lot of black guys. Well, not a lot. There's like 4 black guys in the Old Glory Club, and they are very much on board with everything I just said. Very much
Yeah.
on board with that, because they understand that the American black is unique among Africans in that he don't have a homeland or a country to go back to. He don't have an African heritage. His only African heritage is genetic. He don't have a
Hmm.
cultural or ethnic heritage. He only has an American black heritage. So he has to live here, or he has nowhere else
Right.
to go. So that's
Well, that was Muhammad Ali back in the 60s and 70s saying, "I'm not African. I'm American and I'm black, and I'm both at the same time."
yeah.
And I think a lot of what you're hitting on right now is when someone is I hesitate to say allowed, because frankly you just have to do some things whether you're allowed or not allowed. But when someone is able to have a strong ethnic identity
Hmm.
and to be proud of their people and of their accomplishments and of who
Hmm.
they are, they want that same thing for all people groups.
Exactly,
They
and that's
they
why
want
that's why the
yes.
worst blacks are welfare babies with no fathers that grow up in horrible Section 8 housing. They have nothing to be proud of culturally or ethnically. They have no positive role models. All they have is just black erasure and misery and individualism. And that's the same shit that the anti-whites are pushing on white people. That's how they want us to be.
Yeah.
And so when you take that shit away and you let the black man make his own businesses and have his own cities and police his own people, and for good and ill, like that gives them a sense of identity and pride that the system, TM, strips black people of having, just like it wants to
Yeah.
strip us of having. And so this is why I don't view non-whites as mortal enemies. I
Hmm.
view anti-whiteism and this purposeful destruction of ethnic identity as the mortal enemy. Because if whites in America or in any white country have a strong positive identity and, most importantly, leadership who goes to bat for that, then the non whites in your area either have to conform or compete. And that is what forges better ethnic racial bonds, or at least functional racial differences, which is what we
Yeah.
were building in the early 1900s before the anti whites and government destroyed it all with the post Nuremberg Boomer Truth consensus.
Yep. So I will say you've been hitting on something too, though, that I've heard. Other people, and you may be saying it plainly too, and it's just not something that I've ever even thought of. But here over the past few months, I've been more and more interested in the separation of the Appalachian people
Hmm.
from the mainland, lowland, however we want to phrase it. Because and you talked about this too. I think there was a different identity there, a different understanding of what slavery was,
Yeah.
and it unfortunately the South all gets lumped together, which may ultimately be what the people want it to be. But I'm
And
just super curious to hear it
okay.
sort of strained out and see what the
Well,
differences are.
you're touching on the differences of people and history there,
Yeah,
because East Tennessee is really old. Western Tennessee is not.
yeah,
Eastern Tennessee are people that go, all the way back to before there was a ratified United States. And of course, we have English, Ulster, Scot, Irish heritage. And many of the Scotch Irish were enslaved and lived in slavery conditions. Now
hmm,
that doesn't mean we were chattel slaves and all that, but what it means is we lived in permanent indentured servitude. Many of us did. And we understood what it was like to be the lowest class, subservient to the wealthy. And so that, like I touched on earlier,
hmm,
is a big difference with, you know, the usual type of northerner or the non-Appalachian type. Because remember,
yeah,
hillbillies almost universally come from the low class, the slave caste, right? We come from those people. But that doesn't mean that we have a necessarily worse genetic code. We just have different shortcomings, shorter temper, willing to throw our lives away for a good fight, that kind of thing.
yeah.
We
Different
have
virtues and
that
vices.
yeah, different virtues and vices than other kinds of whites. And when you talk about Appalachians, remember Appalachia runs from northern Georgia and South Carolina all the way up to Newfoundland in eastern Canada. Like
Mm,
Appalachia covers a long area. But
yes,
Appalachians, if you think of us as a people, it's pretty much West Virginians, East Kentuckians, West Virginia, like the western part of the state of
right.
Virginia, not West Virginia the state, and East Tennessee. That's pretty much the Appalachians. That's the Appalachian ethnic group of the United States, right? Now, of course, Appalachia goes all the way up, into Canada and all that, and we have some similarities in people. But when it comes to the bluegrass, the country music, the fighting Irish, all that kind of shared ethnic background, it's pretty much that big, like 500-mile circle around West Virginia, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and that, right? And
Hmm,
us people, we're a little different from the Deep South people. We're a little different from the English people, the old colonials, right? And
yes.
I think that manifests in a very standoffish, well, you didn't care about us back then. You didn't
Hmm,
care about us during the war between the states because you used us as fodder on both sides. You didn't care about us in the Reformation because you treated us like shit, just like you did the blacks. You didn't care about us during the Industrial Revolution because you treated us like disposable workers, just like you did the blacks. We became Henry Ford's nigger instead of being a rich Frenchman's nigger on a plantation, or a rich Jew's nigger. So it's like we've always had this. We're low class and we know it, and you have always treated us the same as a slave, no matter what the conditions are. You treat us like slaves in the coal mine. You treat us like
Yeah,
slaves on the assembly line. You treat us like slaves at the voting booth. You treat us like we are your fodder to be used however you see fit, and you don't give a shit about us. And whether that be the rich men in Washington, whether that be the internationalists, whether that be the jerks in Hollywood, whether that be the generals that just want us to go die in their wars, we know what time it is. And that's why we're very
yeah.
insular and standoffish, and why we are very libertarian. We don't want
Hmm,
other people. We don't want outsiders. We don't even want white outsiders from the United States. We don't want
yeah.
people from the suburbs in Virginia or the suburbs of Nashville who don't belong here coming to live here, let alone people from Pakistan and India and China and shit. We really don't want them, but we don't want people who aren't us coming in, whoever they are.
Yes.
Like, we're very clannish. And that, again, of course, goes back to our Scottish and Irish roots. We
Hmm,
are very clannish and standoffish. And again, I'm not necessarily saying this as a positive. I think in the
yeah.
modern era, that actually works to our detriment, being very libertarian and standoffish and not wanting to identify with other whites. I
Yeah.
think that is very much to the detriment of the Appalachian Tennessean and the Appalachian in general. But that is a thing that sets us apart, is our staunch clannish distancing from even other white Americans, and
Yeah.
that sets us apart in both positive and negative ways. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was perfect. It is one of those things, and I like how you brought emphasis to the fact that what you were saying wasn't necessarily positive, because it's easy for me as somebody outside of that people group to look at it and be like, "Oh man, it's just so awesome." And it is like, well, parts of it, yes, but let's try to keep things in perspective. Um, so no, that's awesome. I know for as I was growing up, there was uh, hmm, let me figure out how I can do this safely and so on. Uh, there was very much this idea of Appalachian and Midwestern,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a Southern man, but we never really, just for various reasons, never ran into the Southern man.
Well,
Um,
the Southern man is probably because that probably means deep South, right?
yes,
Like
yeah, that was the idea. Mhm.
The plantation shield of North and South Carolina,
The
Mississippi,
landed
Alabama.
South.
Yeah, the landed South, and of course, you have your poors down there, which are very sympathetic to the Appalachian hillbilly, very similar, but
Mm,
a different type of person because it's a different type of background. Now we do share a lot because remember, the white folks that originally populated the deep South were from all over the colonies, but it was heavily
yes.
the lower classes, which are my people. But it's you're talking about 150 200 years of ethnic separation, so
Hmm.
there is a little bit of difference. Again, we are more similar than we are different, but it's the little differences that make up all the difference.
Yeah.
If 1% of your DNA was rearranged, you might be a dolphin or a silverback gorilla. Like a little bit matters a lot when you're talking about, ethnic and racial makeup. So
Yeah.
even though the regular Southern white man has very similar, or almost identical genetics and haplomarkers that I would have, culturally we have become a little different over the last 150 200 years, but
Yes.
not so different that we wouldn't easily be fast friends under any kind of circumstance. Like if I go to the deep South in Alabama or Georgia, the way I talk is very sympathetic to a Southerner who has a deep Southern drawl. Like I would feel right at home in the plains of Georgia or Alabama in a Southern plantation home, drinking sweet tea and mint juleps, talking about how good the help is down here and how the black folks
Yes.
down here are good and they appreciate us or whatever, or how the black folks are getting uppity and out of line and I wish things were like they used to be. Like that kind of talk can easily be had in East Tennessee or in the southern reaches of Alabama. We are
Okay.
very, very similar, but it's the little differences that make us different. And like I said, those differences are of minor nuance, but they are noticeable
Yeah.
if you have that nuanced understanding of the different kinds of Southerners. But to an outsider, we would seem so similar they would think we're the same thing.
Sure. Yeah. What am I thinking? Poles versus Hungarians or something like that.
Yeah, something like
So,
that. Yeah.
yep. Yep. So not to spring this on you, but I'm curious just because one of the ideas floating around in the background, HBD, excuse me for the listener, human biodiversity and ideas with adaptation, all that. Where do you think those differences come from? And part of the reason I'm asking this is because when you look at the Scots Irish and where they're living in the various Celt lands, when you look at Lowland English in London, and then where these people groups, excuse me, came and settled in this huge continent of North America, oftentimes it's very similar.
I think it's because there's more to us than science can understand or
Okay.
metric. I think that all that we know about haplogroups and genetics and the influences over long periods of time that environment has on changing human DNA,
Hmm.
I don't think that science can explain all of that yet. I think that there is a spirit or a nature to man that exists because of the kind of man, the kind of primate he is. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to explain it with science, but if we can, it will be something of the metaphysical nature or a scientific word for metaphysics.
Sure.
The spirit of the North is in me. The spirit
Hmm.
of the Celts is in me. Now, there's no scientific explanation for that other than pointing to shared genetics. There's no other scientific
Yeah.
explanation for that. But when you take people that are of a certain heritage, now I mean long heritage, like, geologic evolutionary heritage,
Hmm.
those traits come to the forefront despite all other social economic factors, right?
Right.
Like, you can take an IQ 60 bushman from Africa, and when he's a baby, you put him somewhere like, the highest seats of learning in Paris or London or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, those traits that make him an IQ 60 sub-Saharan African, guy who has no racial memory of being part of Western civilization,
Hmm.
that person can adapt somewhat if the only
Right.
culture he ever knows is ours. But he's always going to be that low IQ outsider of a different genetic group because that's his biospirit. And that's why
Yeah.
I like the word biospirit. It's kind of scientific, but it's also metaphysical.
Hmm.
Whatever science comes up with to explain the biospirit, that is the thing I'm talking about. The biospirit that I share with Scots, Northerners, Irish, that biospirit is stronger. It resonates stronger with them than it does my North European, Nordic, or Germanic roots because I am genetically further distanced from them. So
Yes.
less of that biospirit naturally manifests through me, but it
Hmm.
still can. It's just overshadowed by the Irish and Scottish biospirit because that's what I'm closer to genetically speaking. And again,
Right.
none of that is exactly scientific, but maybe one day it could be. But there's enough obvious truth to that it can't just be
Right.
false, and it can't just be confirmation bias. There's enough observable behavioral traits going on there to where
Hmm.
there's definitely truth to that, but there just isn't a scientific field that can point to parts of the brain or hormone washes or the way that
Right.
the endocrine system triggers markers in the blood to make certain things happen. We don't have science to talk about
Hmm.
biospiritual expression yet. And
Well,
we might never, but we certainly don't have it yet. But that's what I think all this comes from, is
yes.
a biospiritual, or if you want to use the term metaphysical trait that follows bloodlines and genetic heritage
Hmm.
that can't easily be described with science.
No, I think for myself at least,
Especially
that's
because science is all blank slate bullshit.
yes.
Socioeconomic factors define everything, which we know is BS. I think that's the main reason why there isn't good science on this yet. Maybe once we clear all them out and we have our guys doing the science again, maybe we will have that unlocked one day.
Yeah. Well, I think it was one of those things that it used to be patently obvious, completely banal to the point that we didn't know that we needed to build a hedge around this idea. And I think it is both a combination of metaphysics, like you're talking about, and then there also is a scientific aspect to it, in that people adapt to their environment. Now, that's not. It's always this question of emphases. And so I'm in agreement with you on what you said about bringing Bushman and putting him in one area, and expecting him, that first generation, to have to interact as we normally would. But what I'm
Right.
also saying is that as people groups spread and went through hundreds, if not thousands, of generations of expecting the snow to arrive in October, or
Mm-hmm.
expecting the snow to never arrive,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're living on a beach or living in mountains, this, for life to continue, certain awarenesses had to
Right.
be developed in
Those
various
are what
people
I would
groups.
call evolutionary traits. Like the
Yes.
evolutionary trait of the northerner, whether you're talking about Scotland or Nordics and
Mhm.
the Scandinavian countries,
Right.
you have to
Winter is coming.
understand long-term planning. You have to understand rationing. You have to
Yes.
understand preparation. You have to understand things, and people who did not, those genetic traits died out. And
Right.
so you have a different set of traits for the Bushmen in Africa, for the
Mhm.
Mongols in Mongolia, for the islanders in the Pacific. Different
Mhm.
traits were necessary for survival, and the ones that were detrimental all died out. And those still live in us. We are still primal beings. We are primitive at our core, and those things
Right.
are still with us. And that's why I think modern civilization came from the northerner, the white man first, is because We had the leg up evolutionarily on preparation, crop cycling, things that are required for the advancement of technology, and then the enshrinement of passing along academic education. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean academics in the way we know it today, but it means things that aren't necessary to your survival, but are necessary for technology and higher thought. That can
Mhm.
only come from a prepared people that generate a surplus and have that excess time to devote to those things. It also has to do with the materials that were available to us. We had everything we needed for coal, glass, uh, water, all of these necessary building blocks to create what we know as the modern world. China
Yes.
didn't have access to silicon and glass, or they might have surpassed us at one point. They didn't have a necessary element in their materials. They also
Mhm.
are genetically different from us and come from a different genetic group, so they have different strengths and weaknesses, civilizationally speaking. So the
Yes.
East Asian developed high civilization much differently than the European did. And
Mhm.
we simply happen to have the traits and the materials available to us to be the one that became the dominant civilizational model. That's why the entire world civilization looks like ours now, is because we happen to hit upon the winning combination first. And that's
Right.
because our biospirit had the right combination of things and the right combination of materials in the environment to create, to apply our genius of low time preference, preparation, ingenuity to survive the storm. All of that came together to make us the world leader of civilization and technology. And again, I'm not talking bad about the other races. I'm just talking honestly about
Yes.
what is, right? This is just what is. This is how it is.
Well,
So,
it's a different application too of how we get into things. If I remember correctly, Chinese had gunpowder nearly 250 years before
yeah,
we did. I
yeah.
might be off on those years,
No,
but the idea,
The East Asians are a comparable civilizational group in
yeah,
capability. It's just they're of a different biospirit, and they had in my
we
opinion,
apply these things differently.
a poorer material substrate to start with.
Yeah. Yep. But that is one of the big things that just keeps overwhelming me is there's this beauty. Oh, okay. So, oh, what's that stupid catchphrase? Diversity is our strength.
Yeah,
Not true. Not true. But there is a beauty to be had in diversity when that diversity is allowed to thrive in its particular area
right.
and when white folks are not
And that's
shredded
why,
down.
in my opinion, that's why the white race is the most diverse race, is
Mm,
because going back to our primitive roots, we are very clannish. You don't have, like, when you look at places like
okay.
Asia and Africa, where there's an overabundance of food and land that you can live in, and you don't have to worry too much about,
Mm,
avalanches and floods and inclement weather destroying your entire crops and village and everything, like literally every
yes.
year, then you develop differently. The European, the Northerner, the Scandi especially, developed in a very inclement, challenging, abusive climate system. And we had to survive the long winter. So, as our civilization developed, we remained very clannish. We don't know the
Yeah.
people that live 50 miles from here, and they're probably our enemies when it comes to resources. It wasn't until the
Yes.
very, very modern era, going back to, known history like the Renaissance and forward, that the Europeans even slightly started to see each other as similar. It used to be like, you remember the way race used to be used 300, 400 years ago? It's the way we use nationality and ethnicity now.
Right.
The Scandies even viewed each other as different races back in the day, 400, 500 years ago. The different
Yes.
Germanics viewed each other as different races. And we kept very staunch territorial lines between each other. And that's
Yeah.
why the white race has such amazing diversity of physical traits: eye color, hair color, skin color, facial physiognomy, body build. The white race itself has an enormous amount of diversity compared to every other race on earth because of that. Because we recognized, for survival reasons, that diversity exists. Like, I am different from those fuckers that live over the hill. We save our berries different.
Yeah,
We
right.
build our
Okay.
huts differently to survive the winter. Don't build your
Yes.
hut like them people over there. Build your hut like we do here. Like,
Yeah.
and so we kept that alive all throughout the thousands and thousands of years of our development. And that led us to being a very genetically diverse race because of that. And so that's why it's very difficult for Europeans to see each other under a single banner of white identity because of that. But it's
Yes.
very easy for Africans and Asians to see each other under a similar racial banner because of that.
Yeah.
Like the Indians have their own racial banner, even though there's 1.5 billion or 2 billion of them, and they have different ethnic makeups and ethnic groups. The
Right.
Chinese are mostly Han now because of Han National Socialism taking over and kicking the previous Chinese down to Taiwan. But communist occupied mainland Taiwan is a funny thing to call China. But I digress. They have much less genetic ethnic diversity in their race
Mm.
than we do. That's why it's very easy for white people to go at each other's throats, and why you have a lot of
Yeah.
the chud brain Euro chuds who hate America, and the Americhuds who hate Europe. Like, oh, you gunless dumbass, and then you got the Euro chuds being like, you mutt race loser, you don't have any history. Like, it's very easy for whites to go at each other's throats because of how ethnically diverse we are in the same race. It's
That's a
very
good
easy
point.
to do that. So it's why attacking us on the lines of race is kind of our blind spot, and that's why
Yeah.
the anti-whites, especially the evil Ashkenazi Jews who do it, they found our Achilles heel. They'll attack us because of our race, and we don't see it because the white man has trouble seeing himself as a race. He sees himself through a clannish ethnic identity, not a racial identity. That's how we see ourselves first. We have to learn to see ourselves as a race, at least enough to defend against the anti-white stuff. I don't want
Yeah.
us to forego it and give up all of our beautiful ethnic diversity, but I also want
Yes.
us to realize we are being attacked by our race, not our ethnicity. And we need to realize that and defend against that before all is lost.
Attacked for our race, not our ethnicity. I like that. I like that. Hey,
Yeah.
this was
We need to have racial solidarity with ethnic sovereignty. That is
yes.
the way for the white man. We need to realize that we stand alone in the world as a race, as the leader of technology, civilization, and culture, and we need to act responsibly. We need to love and support our ethnic diversity while recognizing our racial unique nature on earth, and that
Yes.
others are jealous of us and will want to take from us. Even if they don't realize it, they'll do that. And so the white man needs to have racial consciousness, but we still need to honor our ethnic sovereignty and not try to push people towards some, just globalism by a different name. I don't want there to, like,
Right.
I don't want globalism of any kind. I don't, whether it pretends to be pro-white or not. Like, I don't think
Hmm.
that will work for the white man. It's never worked for the white man. We need to lean into our natural primal strengths, which is ethnic diversity, but not going to war and killing each other, and realizing that we are a very unique race that has the most immense genetic makeup of all the other races on earth put together. And we need to cherish that and honor our ethnic sovereignty while defending against the anti-white attacks racially. So there, I'll get off
Yes.
my soapbox now. That's my main thing to talk about.
No, this was perfect. I appreciate it. I will say I don't want to capitalize on your time. So as we start bringing this to a close, I don't know if you have any particular areas within Tennessee or particular folk stories, connections with Tennessee that you say, hey, recognize you are an outsider of Tennessee, but if you really want to know the people, understand this.
I mean, nothing more than I've said already. Like
Awesome.
there's no particular story that I can tell you that would make you understand what it's like to be an Appalachian. Like,
Yeah.
other than what I've shared already, like, to know more, you would have to come here and experience things. And I would have to take way more time than we have on this stream explaining to you all that I've lived through and how I see the world and stuff, which I'm glad to
Yeah.
do, but it's only an hour stream, so we don't have time for that. But
Right.
if there's any one thing that sets Tennessee apart, Tennessee is a large state that has immense importance to the American identity and the American history. And the Tennessean man, especially the hillbilly, has an immense importance to Tennessee, to American history, and to the future of the United States, whatever shape that takes. And I just hope that it's a good future. I hope that we don't have to end up being separatists and fighting a miserable war.
Mm.
I hope that we can avoid that. But I'll tell you this, you don't want to go to war with the Appalachians, and I'll leave it there.
It's a great place to be. Very good. I love it. All right. Well, so I have your information in the description. Where can people find you? Um, what can they look forward to? Actually, I guess we kind of went over that
Well,
a little bit in the beginning,
you
so
can
I don't
find
want to
me.
make you repeat. But
You can easily find me under my unique moniker of Yizz the Eunuch on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. You can find me under Yizz the Eunuch on Twitter, Gab, and Telegram. Yizz Cognito is the actual @ sign, but if you just go on Twitter for Yizz the Eunuch, I'm the only one. Um, like I said, I stream my panel show where we talk about news and laugh at memes and just have a good general discussion about what's going on in the world. That's called Discordant Dragons. It's on Monday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's my main thing. I have on bunches of great guests from all over our sphere. People from AA's community, people from the pro-white communities, people from pro-America, America First communities, people from the Go Free community. I have on a bunch of people that are very sympathetic to all this stuff going on our side of things, and we have good discussions on stuff. We talk about mostly American and Canadian stuff. We talk a little bit about UK and EU stuff, and we largely focus on the things that matter that are going on in culture through the lens of white identity and through the lens of ethnic identity for the white man. And again, we don't just beat the same drum all the time. We talk about all kinds of nuance. It's not just the same thing over and over again. But, it's a good panel show. I love it. I have, between 100 and 150 live viewers. I have several thousand followers, and I haven't grown much in the last few years, but I haven't lost followers either. So that tells me that I have a really solid thing going, and people really enjoy it and appreciate it, or they wouldn't keep giving me money and coming back week after week. So definitely come check that out. It's a fun time. And I don't know. I'm a fun person. I like to talk. I like to talk about what matters. I like to tell fun stories. I like to tell dirty jokes. Like I'm just fun. So come check me out. I'm a good time.
yeah, guys, I really can't. I can't recommend Discord and Dragons enough. It is a good time. I think she phrased that perfectly.
Thank you. Thank you
So
very much.
oh yeah, absolutely. So yes, I greatly appreciate it. I thank you for illuminating Tennessee a bit for us
You're
and
welcome.
focusing on white well-being and giving us a little bit of that. So this was a good
Always,
evening.
always, brother. White well-being comes first above all else.
All right. Well, thank you much. Thanks for everybody tuning in, and we will see you later.
Good night.